I think I did that all right. We'll see. I'm trying the live stream. So thanks for joining us if you're just on YouTube right now, which no one is because I kind of just done this live stream off the cuff. So I decided to live stream our message because on Sunday I made the mistake and forgot to record. And then we had some technical issues where we didn't even have the audio. So I was waiting till later this week to re-record our message. And I thought, hey, why not do it in a live stream so then I can't really edit it or make it sound any more fancy or anything like that. And we've been blessed that we have a new camera here at the church that's able to do live stream, which should enable us to do some fun stuff in the future. But today I just really want to share the message that I shared on Sunday for those that weren't there. And it's always an honor to share these messages each week. Or whenever it's my turn to share a message at Highfields Church of Christ. And this past week's been a bit different for me. So I've been directing a kids camp called SWAC, or Southwest Active Kids. And this camp's a lot of fun. We take kids from the age 8 or 9, roughly to the age of 14. And it was a great camp. There were so many moments though throughout camp where I had to kind of like step up in my leadership. And a good observation of that is you guys can't see in this live stream, but I got one of my legs waxed while trying to answer questions for kids that they had about God, and heaven and hell and all these really complex things that kids think that we don't really realize. And there was also other times where kids would share vulnerable things and holding space and having to step out and support leaders in that, and step out and sometimes when you plan a program and you're planning a camp, things don't go perfectly to plan. So you have to improvise, you have to adapt, and stepping out and doing that kind of stuff. And even organizing a dance party, which I'm really glad we had some amazing leaders that can do that because I can't dance. And I know if it was up to me to organize a dance party, it would have not gone that well. And I was often in a place at this camp thinking, what's next? After taking the step out into unknown waters and co-directing this camp again for my 7th year, and just trying to figure out what it looked like with COVID regulations, because we had to do a lot of things differently just to stay within the guidelines and make sure we were staying COVID safe and following all the things that we needed to follow to still have a camp for these kids. And there was a lot of regulations to follow, a lot of things that were new for me. And throughout camp, I kept having myself think, what's next? What's the next thing that's going to happen? After I've kind of stepped out into these unknown waters, there's all these what next moments. And today, for us as a church, I want to look at what's next for us. And there's a story found in Matthew, and it's Matthew chapter 28, verses 1 to 10. And I believe this will help us in our what's next kind of moment. Because as a church, we've been going through our vision and values, unpacking what that means, looking at what that means for us as a church. And now we're kind of in this moment of, all right, what's next for us? What's next in this step out into unknown waters? And I really feel this story in Matthew can help us with that. And this story in Matthew is found towards the end, and it is about the resurrection morning. So it's after Pilate has told the Pharisees, they could use some soldiers to guard the tomb. Because they were worried about these followers of Christ sneaking out with Jesus' body. Because Jesus said over and over again he was going to come back after 3 days. So they were weary of this. And they wanted to make sure this didn't happen. And Pilate kind of tells them, you got your own guards. You go do it. Get your guards. Get them to, do what they need to do. So they've been guarding this tomb for a couple of days now. And as well as that, we kind of have in the same moment, the followers of Jesus are kind of scattered. They're on the run. They don't know what's next. There was a small group of disciples and many of the women that followed him that watched from afar as Jesus died on a cross. Wondering how that fit into the plans. Wondering what to do. And dealing with the emotions of that, of seeing someone they loved and believed in and they believed was going to save Israel and free them from Romans and all these different things, and seeing them hang there and die. And then on top of that, you got these other followers who are just scattered. They're worried for their own lives, wondering if they're next. And in this moment, I believe we have both the Pharisees and those who disagreed with Jesus, and those who followed him. And they're both thinking the same thing: what's next? Pharisees and those who disagreed with Jesus thinking, what's next to stamp out this movement? What's next? The followers of Christ are thinking, what's next? We just saw someone that we believe was the Messiah just die on the cross. What's next? And I want to dive into this story now. That we kind of got a feel of some of the things and some of the feelings going on around it. Let's dive into Matthew 28, verses 1 to 10. And I'm reading from the CSB version. And since this is a live stream, I can't have the words come up on the screen. But I'll just read them to you. So this is what it says in verses 1 to 4. After the Sabbath, as the first day of the week was dawning, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to view the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, because an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and approached the tomb. He rolled back the stone and was sitting on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothing was as white as snow. The guards were so shaken by fear of him that they became like dead men. Now I read that and it just makes me say, wow. I mean, could you imagine all the emotions going through these ladies? They saw someone they loved and cared about hang on a cross and die. And one of the most shameful ways to die in that culture. And also one of the most brutal ways. And they're dealing with the emotions of that. Trying to follow their rituals and, look after the body. They waited, to Sabbath and did all the things that they needed to do. And they're walking to this tomb full of grief, doubts, questions, not knowing what's next. And they see an angel of the Lord appear. It causes a violent earthquake and looks like lightning. And I don't know about anyone else, I love comics and Marvel movies. So to me, this sounds like a Thor kind of style of angel of the Lord. Like it's a Thor with lightning and everything like that sitting on a tomb with a stone rolled back. I mean, what would be going through your head? These ladies were not walking with a clear head to begin with when they were approaching the tomb. They were probably full of grief. I've no doubt they were probably sobbing about the things they've witnessed, about the life of Jesus that's been taken. Let's keep reading to see what happens in verses 5 to 7. And this is what it says. The angel told the women, "Don't be afraid, because I know you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here, for he is risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he is risen from the dead, and indeed he is going ahead of you to Galilee. You will see him there. Listen, I have told you." I mean, could you imagine all the thoughts going through your head if you were these ladies? I mean, all the stuff leading up to the tomb, all the stuff you've witnessed, all the things you've seen Jesus talk about and witness in his ministry, everything that's happened. You get up to this tomb, you see this incredible event, and then you hear this from the angel. I mean, the angel, too, he tells them what to do next, but there's not a lot of direction. There's still a lot of unknown about what's next. They don't have a clear roadmap of, when you tell the disciples this is going to happen, when you get to Galilee, this is going to happen, and this is the next step. They just get told one step at a time. There's not a big roadmap from this angel. And there's not really grounds for him to argue, if you think about it too, with how the angel kind of finishes saying, "Listen, I have told you." It's kind of like there's nothing to debate. How do you debate with the angel after you've seen that stuff witnessed? You just have the next step and what's next. Let's read the rest of the story just to see how it ends. And this is what it says in the remaining verses. So departing quickly from the tomb with fear and great joy, they ran to tell his disciples the news. Just then, Jesus met them and said, "Greetings." They came up, took hold of his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus told them, Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to leave for Galilee, and they will see me there. I don't know about anyone else, but this story really gives me goosebumps reading it. And I kind of love how the women depart quickly with great fear and joy. And I feel like we all have moments like that, where we kind of think about what's next, or we know what's next and there's some clear direction, but we're kind of filled with fear and joy at the same time because we don't have the whole picture. And I can think, for me, I think back to this kind of, moment that I had, that I was full of great fear and joy. And I can think back to when my first son was born, and I was 19 years old. And just, you leave the hospital and it's kind of weird, right? There's so much paperwork. If I want a license or anything like that, I have to do so much paperwork. So many things to sign. But with a baby, there's very little. You do a couple paperwork in the hospital, but then as a 19-year-old kid, I'm walking out with this baby. No one's going to check up on me. No one's going to do, there's no manual to be like, all right, here you go. Here's how you raise a boy in, 2009. There's no manual. There's no roadmap. In that moment, holding my son, putting him in the car seat for the first time, I was full of fear and joy. And I know we all have moments like that. So we don't know the whole picture. Leaving that hospital, I didn't know the whole picture. I didn't know what my son was going to be like in 2 or 3 years. I didn't know the issues or anything that would happen in the future. I just had to keep taking it one step at a time. Full of fear and joy. And I love how in this moment, after the women kind of have their moment, right? Their what's next moment. And they go for it. They take that next step. The disciples kind of have theirs at the same time. Giving one step of what's next at a time without knowing the whole picture. Because I don't think too often we get the whole picture in life. We just get one step at a time in what's next. And I feel in this what's next moment for us as a church, we've been given step one of our direction. And we're tiptoeing into unknown waters with our vision and values God has called us to thinking about and reflecting on and being as a church. And we're starting to think and wonder what's next. And I believe there's a lot when we think about what's next for us. We don't have the whole picture. I don't have the whole picture. But I know I keep taking it one step at a time, and God keeps opening up doors. I felt, we're about to have a church building, which I'm in now, which isn't completely done, but it should be done soon. And it's going to be right in the center of Highfields community, a community that is growing, that town planners don't know what to do with the growth sometimes. And I've noticed that there's 2 big schools not far from us. And the big issue is, what do these kids do after school? In a community where most parents work. So that led me to be like, let's do a drop-in center. I didn't know what the next step was, but I met with people from council. I met with the police station. And doors have just kept opening to do this drop-in center. To have a place for youth and kids to go after school while they're waiting for their parents to get home. And then not only that, with COVID, it really showed me that the church is able to change. I mean, I know for my church, if I would have told them when I started before COVID, you wait in a couple months, we're going to be having live stream or like Zoom prayer groups and meetings. They would have laughed. But we are able to change. We are able to adapt. So if that's the case, why not keep stepping out in that? So we're looking at doing something called missional gatherings, where we give different entry points for people to come into the church. Where for families and young people and young adults, if Sunday doesn't work for whatever reason, whatever barrier is there, giving them another option. Being creative in that. Making church more than just what happens on a Sunday. Giving more entry points for people to experience God's love. And then not only that, starting this role, just doing what's next, there's a Church of Christ retirement village in Crow's Nest. And we're just stepping out to see what we can do to help there. So I've been feeding that information to you guys. I've met with people out there, and we're just tiptoeing what to do, what to help and support, because they've been hit hard by COVID too. And there's a lot of people there who don't have people come visit often. So how can we help in that? And I don't have the whole picture. I'm just taking it one step at a time. And as our church building gets closer and closer to being finished, what does it look like for us to have a church building in the center of town? In a place where there's a community growing at a rapid rate. What is God calling us to do here? And we've already tiptoed into, I've had someone speak to me about doing a drop-in center for oldies and retirees where we give them a place to come, play some board games or something like that. Now, what does that all look like for us? And those are some of the things that's what's next for us. And I don't have the whole picture. I can't tell you how a drop-in center is going to work, how these missional gatherings, or if it's even going to be called that when we get to the finish. I don't know what the final picture is. I'm just taking it one step at a time with what God shows and what's next for us. Just like we find in the story, the disciples and the followers of Christ, they didn't have the whole picture. They had one step at a time, and they kept taking it. You read Acts, you read more of the gospel accounts, and you see that over and over again. Them just figuring out what's next, one step at a time. And I believe that's what God's calling us to do as a church. In a Highfields community that's growing. He's calling us to step out and take it one step at a time with what's next for us. And are we willing to keep taking that next step in what's next for us as a church? Because that's hard to do. It's easy to say, but it's hard to do. Are we willing to do that? With the things that we started, like the Need a Hand project, we're trying to help people in the community. Are we passionate enough to keep taking it one step at a time to help out in that? It's amazing stuff the women's ministry does. Are we going to keep taking it one step at a time with what's next for us? Not knowing the whole picture, but just listening and sitting with God and doing that next step He gives us. And I really believe if we're able to do that as a church, we're going to be amazed at where God has brought us as a church in a year's time. We're going to be amazed about the things He's done in and through us as a community. And I really pray that we keep taking that next step for God. And I thank you so much for joining and listening. And may God's grace and peace be with you. Thank you. Sorry, didn't hit the stop button on the record. We'll get it this time. Thank you.